Okay, good afternoon and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to look at wiring in this windscreen. So when we had the windscreen in place, we could see that it had a heated element in it that the original one didn't have. So we haven't got any of the wiring or any of the bits and pieces to put this in. Sometimes these things are already in the van, they're just not used, but there isn't anything in this van for that, so we're going to have to wire it from scratch. Now usually this would be controlled by a computer, BCM, body control module, whatever you want to call it. So they're all little computers and they run various bits and pieces with most modern cars these days, whether it be central locking, whatever, they're all run through a little computer. Years ago that wasn't the case, it was just power and relays and different bits and pieces, and that's how it works. So that's how we're going to do it. I mean, it is possible to do it how Volkswagen intended, but it's way beyond my capability and not something I'm even interested in looking into. But I know it is possible with the right bits and pieces. So first thing I did was order a switch from Volkswagen's, and I'll show you that now. Okay, so when you get your switch from Volkswagen's, this is what you're going to end up with. It's a single switch and another blank. So that's the part number there. If we can get that to focus on there. Yeah, just about. So that's the part number. And the tails you buy separately, but they're just little wires with the ends on, which are a ridiculous price for what they are. But they come double-ended, so you don't actually need, you need half as many as you think, because you basically cut them down. So that's the main part of the switch, and that will just slot in there. Now I'll show you the wiring in a minute, but there's several things that we need to make this work. So the first thing we need is the switch. Once you've got the switch, you then need to power everything up. So ideally you want to be using an ignition live. It's one that's switched on with the ignition. You don't want it permanent. If it's a permanent live, then it's if you accidentally hit the button when you're out and about or camping or whatever, you could run the battery down, and it's not good practice to run live cables throughout a car when they don't need to be live. So ideally you want something that's live only when the ignition's on. Now underneath the passenger seat is a fuse box. So this fuse box is all these here, they're permanent lives, but actually this row in the middle, these 10 mils here, so this row here is actually ignition live. It's quite handy. We also have the fuse box itself, so we've got room for relays and bits and pieces in here, so that's handy. The other things we're going to need are the relays themselves. Now there's lots of different sorts of relays and we'll go into those in a minute, but suffice to say there's plenty of room and everything's quite handy to get to. So this is going to be done in basically two parts, the inner and the outer. The outer part will go underneath the engine bay, and that will actually power the windscreen, and I'll show you that in a second as well. But for the inside bit, we're going to need relays in here, the switch and the power, and then send power to the engine bay. So I'll show you that now. Okay, so back underneath the engine bay, when we were sorting out this corner, obviously we had this all apart. So underneath this cover these are fuses for things like the glow plugs and bits and pieces like that. They're all high power ones, very big cables, plenty of power going into here, so which is quite handy. And it also has this spare terminal down here. Now we can use that spare terminal to power the heated windscreen. And in fact, I think in the original vans that have heated windscreens, this is actually where the power comes from. So what we can do is use this as a power source for the relays to power the windscreen. Now the wire for the windscreen is actually here. This is one of them. There's two, one on either side, because the windscreen is, although it's heated, is split into two halves. So we're going to need two relays, power, and a signal from inside the van to power that. So under the engine bay, fairly straightforward. Inside, a little bit more difficult because of the switch, but we'll show you that now. Okay, so I appreciate that for a lot of people this is going to be quite basic, but not everybody knows and everybody has to learn somewhere. So if this helps anybody out, then I'm glad I did it. So relays in their basic form, this is a 4-pin relay. pretty much as basic as it gets. This one does have the addition of a fuse, so there is a wiring diagram on the back of it. It's not very easy to see this one, but the power comes in here, the fuse, the switch, and power out, and this is the electromechanical switch. So in essence, relays are electromechanical switches. They allow a high current to be switched on by a low current. The advantage of this is, especially in cars, is you can use nice light switches that aren't heavy. I mean, the power needed for the heated windscreen is going to be quite high. It's somewhere in the region of 25 to 30 amps each side, and there's two sides to the front screen. So to have that sort of switch on the dashboard, you'd have a big heavy mechanical switch, and it just wouldn't be nice to use. But this is literally just a light touch switch, which is nice, it's easy. So using the relay, we can use the nice light switch to turn on a heavy duty circuit. Okay, so this is a wiring diagram from Vehicle Wiring Products catalog, and it's just quite easy to see here. So the 4-pin relays, two different types. You've got type A and type B. Now ironically, type B is the most common. Type A isn't that common, especially in Europe. I'm not sure if that's more in America or not. I'm not really sure, but definitely here type B is the most common, but you always need to check. The reason being that type B and type A are not interchangeable. So if you look at the actual circuit, the electromagnet is 85 and 86, and it is on all of these, 85, 86 on every single one. 30 and 87 is the high power switch, but if you look at the diagram here, 30 and 86 on the A is 86, 30 is B, so they will not work. They'll either burn something out or it just will not work, period. So if you're ever changing a relay and you're not sure, just make sure it's the right type. Always have a good look at the relay and just see. Okay, so the basic 4-pin relay is this electromagnet, power in here, power out there, energizes the magnet, and it switches on the high power circuit. As soon as you turn the power off, that will let release, and this bigger circuit then will no longer give power. This one here is exactly the same, only the big power circuit here, the 30, has a fuse on it, and that's the type that we've just shown you here. That's what that is on the side of the relay. That's a fuse, and the fuse would go in there. And it's just a neat way of doing it. You can obviously wire up fuses separately and all the rest of it, but that's just a nice, neat way of doing it. So the one next to it is a 5-blade relay, and it's a changeover relay. So when the electromagnet energizes, power comes in, and it switches over from 30, goes from 30, it switches over from 87A to 87. So this would be for switching from one circuit to another. And then again, as soon as you release that power, that will switch back to the other circuit. Now all these relays have different uses, different bits and pieces, depending on what you want to do with them. So this one down here, again, is a 5-blade relay, but it's a double switch. So it's basically when it energizes the electromagnet, power comes into the 30 and then goes back out to 87 and 87B. So this one goes from one to the other, but this goes to both circuits. This one here essentially does the same thing as this one. It's, for some reason, this is a twin, this is a double. What the difference is, there obviously is a reason for it, but to be honest, I don't know what that reason would be. So over here, there's relays with diodes. Now the reason they have diodes in is for more sensitive circuits. Some circuits are very sensitive, and any feedback at all wouldn't be a good thing. So they have diodes in to stop any electric coming back across the circuits. Okay. Now on the other side here, this one is a latching relay, which is essentially the same as a changeover relay, except that it latches on. So when the electromagnet fires, power comes in, switches over to the other circuit, and in order to turn it back, you then have to power this again. So this wouldn't have constant power. This is one of these switches that you would be momentarily powering, and that would switch it over, and then switch it again, it would do the same. So there are different types of relays. Obviously this is a 4-pin relay. This one is a 5-pin, so there's 5 pins in it. Again, this is switch over relay, so 30 power in, electromagnet here, switches this over from 87A to 87, exactly as that diagram. This one here is a mini relay. Sorry, this is a mini relay, this is a micro relay. Same thing, low power circuit, high power circuit, and it's just a changeover, same as the other one. Nothing different, it's just smaller because it doesn't need as much. Okay, so inside the car, we're going to use this relay. Now this relay is a TLT/5-12. I think it's from something like a Peugeot. I'm not 100% sure, but I mean, if you Google this up, it'll come up with these relays. So you can get all sorts of different ones. You can get adjustable ones and different timings, but I think this is basically 12 minutes. So this is what's going to power our relays in the engine bay. Now the wiring on the back of this, obviously, because it is a special relay, is slightly different. So if we draw the bottom of this, this has 5 pins, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. So number 5, straightforward, that's 12 volts to the engine bay to power our other relays. So 12 volts to the engine bay. Number 3 is our power in, so that's 12 volts in, but this 12 volts in will be from the ignition because we don't want a permanent light. We don't need it, we don't want it to accidentally be on all the time or anything. Number 2 is our earth, so that's the earthing point. Now in order to fire this relay, you need 12 volts to both of these. So basically, if we have a switch, which we do, that would just momentarily even switch between these two. By pressing that, it would complete the circuit and it would fire this for 12 minutes. So the power in would stay on for 12 minutes, even though there's no more power on this. Once it's energized, that's it. So that's all it needs. The issue with that for us is that in order for this switch to work, it has different color lights as well. So the lights also need a ground. So the ground can't be used just for the switch because then it wouldn't ground the lights in order for them to work. It has a white light for the when you put the lights on the dashboard, and then when you actually press the switch, it glows orange instead. So there's 2 different circuits for the lights, one for an earth, one for the power. So in order to make this work with this relay, we then need an additional relay. Now for this, I'm going to use a micro relay because it's not a very high powered circuit anyway, and it doesn't need very much. So in order to get that working, basically what we've got, number 1 would go to the high powered circuit on the little relay. So number 4 would also be 12 volts ignition in. The second half of this one also go to 12 volts in, but this won't fire unless this fires. So by connecting 12 volts to this, also to the ignition, we can then add our switch. So if I put our switch over here, the back of our switch is basically shaped like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's number 1. That's number 5. That's number 6. And that's number 10. So the 4 wires that we need, number 1 is our earth. So that's got to go to earth in order for that to work. Number 2 is our white light. So this is the dashboard lights. So this can be basically wired into the dashboard cigarette light, what light, whatever you want to do. That's easy enough. We're running out of room here now because I haven't done this very well. So the orange telltale light is number 6. So this wire, actually, if we wire it over to number 5 with that, this will be orange when it's on. So that will power this, and it will power the engine bay once. So the only other wire we need is this one here. So this will complete the circuit on the low power side of the relay. So that will go to there. So basically by pressing the switch, it completes this circuit and puts this to ground. So everything goes to ground through here for this low powered side, and then that fires everything else off. So the next thing now is to basically make up the looms. The separate looms, one for inside the van, one for outside, and obviously a connector for the two. Okay, so this is what we've ended up with. This is the engine bay loom. So this loom is, like I said, very straightforward, just 2 relays, 2 plugs for the window, power in, earth for the switch. All it's missing now is the actual switch live from inside the van. So these 2 connectors are bigger 9mm spade connectors that are on the window. So this will be power into the window, and obviously the earth will be the other side of the window for that. That's the power in, so that comes from the big fuse box underneath the engine bay, gives power to the window. And to switch it on, we need that. That's the earth switch. 2 relay bases. This relay here is just for demonstration basically. Already mounted the 2 relays in the engine bay ready to go. All I have to do then is plug all this in once I've got the other part of it wired up. So the engine bay, very straightforward. That was quite easy to do. Inside the van, things are a little bit more complicated, just a bit more involved. Still fairly basic, but more involved than outside. This is our micro relay. This is the one that will trigger this one, and then this one is the one that will trigger the 2 under the engine bay. So the trigger wire for the engine bay is this one here. That's just coiled up out of the way, ready. Haven't put the connector on it yet because I need to put it through the grommet and bits and pieces ready to connect up to the 2 relays under the engine bay. But that connection, very straightforward. Okay, so that's the earth. That's the earthing for this relay. And that's power in for this relay. So that's 12 volts into that relay, to that one, and to the bottom one as the diagram. And then this is 12 volts from this relay, and then 12 volts in from this relay will come via the switch momentarily to give 12 volts to fire this. So this connector to the fuse box under the seat, as well as this one, and then this brown wire then is the trigger wire from the switch. So all this brown wire does is complete the circuit on the low current side of this relay. So you've got power coming in, and then it earths out through the switch, through the earth on the switch. So power in here, through the relay, and then it gets earthed out through this wire, through the switch to earth. So that fires that. Once that fires, that will put 12 volts again from this other wire to this one and connect the 2, as the diagram said, to fire this off. So the switch gets wired into the switch wire here, and then you've got these other ones. This is the white dashboard light that comes on when you put your lights on. This one is the orange telltale, and then that's the earth for the switch. So what I'll do is I'll just connect all this up now. I've got some cables. So I've got a set of these cheap tester cables that you can get, basically just crocodile clips, thin wire, and they got covers on. I bought a battery in from the garage, and you can tell Cherie's not home today, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this on the kitchen side. But basically we'll put power and earth for everything and just test it, make sure it's all working as it should do. So I'll just connect it all up now. Okay, it looks a bit of a mess here now, but basically what we got, these 2 lives for these lives here, connected straight to the battery, and then a live connection for this one. Sorry, this is a live that's connected to those for those relays underneath the engine bay. Put this light bulb in here just to represent the windscreen. So wire stuffed in there basically just to make a connection, and then that's earthed through this one here. These earths for the trigger underneath the engine bay, and the trigger wire I've just connected basically quickly to that relay there just to represent what we've got. So everything is earthed, everything has got power. The switch live here for the actual switch. The telltale orange live, this will be spliced into this trigger wire for the relay, so that will be, once I've placed that in the car, I'll know where to splice it in. At the moment it's a bit difficult to work out. The only wires that isn't connected then is the white dashboard light, which is this one here. But if I put that to power, that should give us a white light. So you can see that coming on and off. So that wire there will be just wired directly to the lights on the cigarette lighter. So that'll be easy enough to do. Obviously that's the earth then for the switch, which will earth all the bits and pieces. So the relay's earthed. So when I press the button, we should have an orange light on the switch, and the light should come on to represent the windscreen. So that's how that works, and we can also turn it off at any time. It just works fine. So basically that will stay on for 12 minutes, or you can switch it off once it's done. So now we know everything works, we can basically put it all in the van. Back inside the van, so we fitted the switch in the dashboard, connected the wires up, earthed the white light to the light for the cigarette lighter, and the other two connected up to the wires from the loom that we made. Inside the van everything's worked out quite well, but there is a problem underneath the engine bay. So in this fuse box we fitted the relay. I bought the base from MAN. It's basically this base, the grey one. That fits fine. Trouble getting hold of the connectors for that though. In the end I did use the same ones I used for the fuse, and I'll show you a quick picture of that type here. That did fit into this okay, but they're not ideal. They're not the same as the ones that are originally fitted, which I'll put a picture of now as well. But they worked okay for that one. On the micro relay side, obviously the two larger side, that would work okay, but the smaller side it wouldn't. So this is a generic micro relay base that I've just super glued into here. So that fits okay. Earth is here, and the wires basically for the switch go through, there's like a plastic conduit that comes underneath the floor here, so run those through there. And then for the engine base side, there's a wire that comes basically under here through there. You can just see it there, under there. So it'll be underneath this panel, and then under here is a rubber grommet that goes through to the engine bay. So that was easy enough. So I'll show you the problem now with the underside. Underneath the engine bay then, the wire comes in through this grommet and to the relays just to trigger them off. Relays are earthed here. This wire here then is the power to the windows, and the power for that comes from this fuse here. So I've put a 60 amp fuse in there, 2 wires to each relay, and you may be able to see, but the problem I had was this relay's got very, very hot. So I don't know whether it's just a bad relay. This one didn't seem to get as hot, but I'll put 2 new fuses in there. I'll recheck all the connectors. I have ordered 2 40 amp relays instead of the 30s, so hopefully that might help solve the problem. But I mean, the fuse didn't actually blow, but obviously it got very warm, so that's not ideal. But once we've sorted that out, it's all working, everything works fine. So that's going to be it for this one. We'll see you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe if you can. Thank you.